Yeah. Anyhow, I just watched this interesting video about 5 personality types that you do not want in your band. Uh, and This actually can apply in real life, in not real life, but outside of a band scenario. Yeah, like just in life in general, you know. And so I've been in some bands myself, and uh, and it was really interesting to listen to this commentary on the 5 personality types you don't want in your band, and if they're in your band, you got to kick them out. Okay, so I was listening to this, trying to see where if I am one of those 5. And of course, we're all flawed people, so we're all gonna have some traits and stuff. If a person is self-aware, they're gonna be able to see, where, oh well, I do have some of that in me, and whatever. But the 5 personality types are like where it's more. It's not just a kind of a. It's not just kind of your normal kind of flaw. It's more extreme. Um, and I'm trying to remember the names of them, but I'll start with the one that I realized for me is I have the most. I'm the most to blame of, and that's the perfectionist. um, the reason I say this is because I've been the front man for bands before, kind of like the leader, and so the one that's most glaring for me is the perfectionist. Um, and it was only when I was the front man for the band. Um, which kind of like if a person is kind of leading a band, it's easy to kind of get lost a little bit in perfectionism. But just it's like that with anything. It's like if you were to imagine yourself being like a boss, an employer. Well, you're not going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. And so your flaws are going to, being an employer or a boss, you're going to fail, like in being fair with everyone. You might have a bad day, and somebody's doing something wrong, and you're like, "Come on, bro, what the fuck?" And so we're all like this, like the job that I have right now. I work with people that are really cool people and really fair, but we all have our bad days. And like one guy in particular, he's kind of the unspoken supervisor, and he's a really cool guy. There will be days though where he'll like be an asshole, where it's like, what the fuck, dude? But I understand, when a person understands that this is just a part of life and people are all flawed, it's easier to just kind of let shit go. There's no point, it's like, oh, motherfucker's having a bad day, whatever. I'll just whatever. I'll keep trying the best I can, and that's all. That's the best I can do. That's good enough, whatever. But anyway, so being like the leader of the band is the same thing. It's like being a boss. Like for me, it's hard because the other thing that's hard is like, where other band members. So one of the bands that I was the front man of, there was one member who who just kind of wanted to do their own thing, and it was affecting the songs. So I had to kind of let some of that go and just let them do their own thing, let them express their creativity or whatever. And so it's like a balance, how much do I let, how if a person's a leader of the band, how much do they let others kind of do what they want, or whatever. So with the one band that I was the front man in particular that I'm thinking about, I wrote all the songs. I wrote like 10 songs. But I wrote the drum parts, the bass guitar parts, the guitar parts, and the lyrics. Okay, so I wrote everything. And then I put the songs together in a demo format, and then I put it out there, asking people if anybody would be interested in this project, and here are the songs. Okay, so to be fair with myself, I already wrote all the parts for the songs. I put the songs together, and then I put the songs out and asked people if they would want to be a part of this band. And then I got responses where people are like, yeah. And so then, and so the bass player, the bass player was pretty, solid when, it's like, yeah, I want this person. This person fits the band. Okay. It was the drummer when we started rehearsing drummers, and drummers were coming in, and they didn't, they just couldn't play the song. And see, this is the other thing. Like, when I wrote the songs, I wrote them as simple as possible so that it would be, it would cast a wider net for band members. So I wrote the songs simple, maybe not easy, but simple. Some of the drum parts were kind of unconventional, but those were the parts that fit the song, that fit the riffs for the song, because the riffs were kind of unconventional. And the reason that I wrote the songs like that is so that the songs would stand out from the genre. Instead of sound like cookie cutter songs, they would have a signature sound that kind of stands out, so that people would, when they hear it, they would remember it. It would like catch, where it's like, whoa, here's this genre of music, but they have this subtle difference. Like the songs are, so I wrote the songs like this, but I wrote them simple. But because some of the parts were not conventional, it required a person to put in a little bit of effort to learn the parts, because they're a little just like a little different. So it's subtle, but the subtleties were the very important aspects of the song. And so then when drummers couldn't play it a lot of times. And it was mainly just because what happened is they heard the demo and they're like, oh, this is cool. I want to check this out. I wouldn't mind playing in this band. And they'd show up, but they didn't like really sit and learn the drum parts, because the unconventionality of the drum parts was subtle. When they heard it, they're just like, oh, this is cool. I could play this. And then they would show up, and then it was like, but because they didn't take the effort to learn the song, then when they would show up, they couldn't play it. And so the perfectionist in me started to kind of rear its ugly head. But in a sense, not, because like I said, when I'm being fair with myself, I put the songs together myself and put them out there and asked people if they wanted to play. Okay, so if they didn't like the song, then they could just refuse to play. It's like, nah, I don't really like this song, or I can't play this. This is not really in my wheelhouse. So to be fair with myself, even though we're all flawed, one of my flaws when leading the band can sometimes lean a little bit more towards perfectionist, but also the other side where I allow people to step on the song because I'm trying to give them freedom. So it's like a balancing act. It's a constant balancing act. Like the bass player, I had to turn the other cheek and let them noodle around, because even though they were a good bass player and they fit well generally with the music and the band, everything about the band, they tended to want to noodle and to kind of overplay, and I would have to just kind of let it go. It's like, okay, otherwise, whatever, I'm going to have to find another bass player and this and that. So, and sometimes I allowed them too much, where they're stepping too much on the song. So it's hard to find like a perfect balance. Perfection is like, it ain't going to happen. So, but but anyways, yeah, the drummer aspect was the hardest part because mostly because of the unconventionality of the songs I was writing, and the unconventionality was subtle, so it just sounded like a conventional, straightforward song, but the whole crux of the foundation of the songs that was written on was that it wasn't conventional. It had these subtle unconventionalities, which is what made the signature sound, which is what drew people to it, which is why when I put the demo out, people were interested. They're like, yeah, I want to play this. But because it was subtle, to them in their ear, it sounded like a conventional, straightforward song, which is the whole goal of the band. But they didn't realize that when you listen closely, it's not a conventional, straightforward drum parts. They're actually like a drummer actually has to sit and learn the parts rather than just come in and just play a straight, 4/4 beat or whatever, just like a regular beat. It wasn't, even though it sounded like that, actually learning the parts is so anyway. So I struggled with the drummer kind of thing, but anyways, it was interesting to see like the different people you don't want in your band, because it's totally true. Like one of them was the Rebel Without a Clue. And so like the Rebel Without a Clue member, this is a type of personality type you don't want in your band. The Rebel Without a Clue is someone who is just resistant to authority for the sake of being resistant to authority. So if a band, most bands need a leader, like a front man, right? And so like a Rebel Without a Cause band member, they just want to fuck with the leader of the band just for the sake of fucking with the leader of the band, because they don't like authority. They don't like authority figures. But it's like, well, then don't be in the band. Why are you even in the band if you know that the band has a front man that's the kind of the leader? Why would you even join the band if you're a Rebel Without a Cause? So you're just coming into the band so that you can fuck with the band leader, the front man? That's really weird. See, and that's what happens. You get weird motherfuckers with these weird agendas that join bands. And, so many like really talented bands and talented people never get discovered. You've never heard them and you never will, even though they're fucking like, their shit's like really good. For all these weird reasons that, people and their egos and this and that and stuff. But anyway, so I've been in bands also where someone else was the leader, and I had no problem with it. I actually liked it. I really enjoyed being in a band where someone else was the leader of the band, and I respected them. And I played the songs, and if I played something they didn't like, they would tell me. And when they told me, I was glad they told me, because then I got a better understanding of what their sound that it is that they're going for. And the more input I could get from the visionary of the band, the better for me, the more fun the band was for me, and the more fun I had playing, And so I've never understood what it is that people have in being in a band where they're not the front man. I've never understood that, because anytime I was not the front man, I always fucking loved it. It was fucking great, because the front man really holds the shit together. Like I was in a band, being in bands where the front man really knows how to massage the crowd and all the shit, it relieves a lot of pressure off of the other players. Like if the front man knows how to, is a real entertainer and knows how to fucking hold the crowd's audience's attention and engagement and stuff, it just makes the other players play even better. And so I fucking loved it. It was amazing to play under someone who was the visionary and the front man for the band. It was fucking amazing. I loved it. And so I when I was in bands, I was like a bass player or something. And so I played under the front man. And then after being in a few bands, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 before I started my own band, and where I was the front man, you know. But I had already had experience playing under other people, and I loved it. And so I didn't really anticipate that if I started a band that I would have egos, like people that were not the front man, you know, having a problem with me being the front man. Because I never had a problem with it. I really enjoyed it. So, but when I started my own band and people coming in, you get a lot of problems. You get a lot of problem people and stuff, and with egos and drug problems and all kinds of stuff. And again, nobody's perfect, but like I said, when I was not the leader of a band, I fucking loved it. It was great. It takes a lot of responsibility off of me too, because then I don't have to write the parts. Well, I want to write the parts, but I get input. Like, they'll tell me, or they'll say, here's the song. They'll give me the demo and I'll just learn the song. Like, okay, that's the song. And if they don't have a bass part written, I'll write one. And then if they don't like it, they'll tell me, and then I'll just adjust. Because like I said, I want to understand the vision of the song. And if they're the visionary, then I'll better understand it if someone else is the visionary. And so anyway, so it's all kind of complex, but so the first band where I was the front person was a joke band. So it took a lot of the pressure off of who's the front man, there was no real ego issue because it was a joke band. And the drummer was an extremely talented drummer. And I played bass, and it was low pressure, low key. It was just for fun. But because, you know, there was a lot of talent in the band, like, even though it was just for fun, like, we could really shred and fuck some shit up, right? But because the whole thing was a joke, we kept it as a joke to fuck with people's heads and just to, you know, kind of like a Tim and Eric awesome show, great job vibe of awkwardness and shit like that. It was the whole point of the band. And then the third member was somebody who didn't know how to play any instruments at all. And we put that guy on the keyboards and the guitars, and it was super fun. And I played the role of the frontman. Because somebody has to, you know. Well, not always, but in most cases, you know, there's always a front man. And so, as a joke, I was the front man, and it was super fun, and it was low key, low pressure. But there was a lot of problems because we were so fucking good that the problem was, you know, if one or both of the other members happened to have a drug problem or drinking problem, and we showed up and did a gig, we would sound like shit because they were drunk, which was part of the comedy. So, and because we didn't really take the band serious, it was okay. But it was kind of disappointing because we were fucking so fucking good. And it's really sad to see us as a band that was so fucking good go and play live gigs, and because the drummer's drunk and shit like this, we like sounded like we sounded really not like we were just. It's really frustrating when you have really talented people that are drunk at shows and stuff, you know. And I think that's why the band, we made it so low key and not a lot of high pressure, because people had drug problems and alcoholism problems and stuff. And so even though it was fun and you know, we played good shows, but it's weird because like at rehearsal we would fucking, you know, sound amazing, and then when it was time to play gigs, sometimes one or both of the members would show up so fucking wasted that even though we sound fucking like perfect in rehearsal, once we get to the show and they're wasted, one or both of them is wasted, well, we sound like mediocre at best. But you know, a lot of times, sometimes that made the show. You know, like sometimes we'd go to shows and one or both of them would be either drunk or high or both, and we'd start fighting on stage, and people thought it was part of the show, and in a way, it kind of was because even though we were fighting, we stayed in character, and we knew it was all part of that kind of part of the act. But we were truly really pissed off at each other and shit on stage, and people loved it, you know, and so it just became part of the act. But anyways, my point with that is that was the first band I was the front man of, but it was so low pressure that it was just kind of like it was all a joke, and it was super funny and fun. Only downside is even though we were really good, you know, because they had drug and alcohol problems, sometimes the shows were just the execution of the songs was terrible. But the funny thing is people liked that sometimes better because then we were fighting and yelling at each other and stuff. So that was, and then the other band only one other band I was the front man for, and that one was kind of a serious, not necessarily serious, but like a professional approach to a band. And I was the front man. I wrote all the songs, and like I said, I already pre-recorded all the songs, and all the parts were pre-written. So these are the drum parts, these are the bass parts. The bass guitar had a little bit of wiggle room. The drums, not so much. I mean, it had some wiggle room, but it had to stay within the structure because just because the way the songs were written. And then I played guitar and sang, and so that one, the one that was kind of a more professional approach to band thing, you know, it was really interesting because we played, we had a lot of good shows, we had a lot of opportunity, but there was a lot of turmoil in the band, and you know, we went through several drummers. And the personality types, those 5 personality types that you don't want in your band, they were definitely like you know, a drummer would come in with you know, issues, and then the bass player that I kept on for a long time had a lot of those same issues. And as I said, even me being the front man, you know, falling into perfectionism and shit, you know. So anyways, just a bunch of bullshit.